Hey guys, warning for this video as it involves scars and mentions of torture. With that out of the way, let's start the next arc of their relationship, the trust arc. This arc actually starts right after the night of them sleeping on the roof. As they wake up on the roof, Yasahiro immediately asks for a favor. Noella groggily gets up, a little confused, but she agrees. Sure, she has some time. Oh, and here's your scarf, she says as she untangles it from around her and hands it back, thanking him. He nods and wraps it back around himself before leading Noella off. They end up going to the underground district of the city, following up on a lead about his sister again, as he still wants to bring her back home. Noella helps him get around some guards and work around some underground tunnels until they get to a dead end. They find nothing there except for a small jade bangle. Yasahiro picks it up and goes quiet. He faces away from Noella and places his hand on a wall as he thinks out loud.
Maybe she's right. I know I haven't been a good brother. I know I have anger issues and I've made mistakes. Maybe this is what I deserve, to be alone. Maybe she's better off without me in her life. I just lash out and I ruin things, even when I was young.
Noella can't help but feel sad for him. Her heart tightens at these words. She hasn't felt like this before. Hasn't felt care like this for someone. So she speaks out, trying to be supportive and to help him, but she chooses the wrong words. Noella mentions how he's tried to do his best in awful situations. After all, how else is someone supposed to act as a prisoner of war? And that was the mistake. As that is information she was not supposed to know. That was something only hinted at around one person, their cleric, Hector, in the conversation that she eavesdropped on in episode 1. With that, Yasahiro stiffened and straightened up. He didn't let Noella finish as he turned on his foot and said,
"Let's go. There's nothing here for us,"
and walked past her. Noella sucked in a breath and followed. They made their way through the tunnels in silence, Yasahiro not looking towards her once. Soon, they made it to the edge of the underground district, and Yasahiro stopped, letting her know that he thinks he'll stay here for a bit longer, but she can leave. This hurt Noella a little bit, and she believed she really messed up, but she accepted it and nodded, telling him, "Okay, Listen, I didn't mean... It wasn't because of you that I eavesdropped, okay? It was because of Hector. I was distrusting him, not you. I'm not good at this. I just mean to say that I'm sorry. And I get that you want some time alone, so I'll go. See ya." And she turned to walk away. But Yasahiro cleared his throat to stop her, as he said,
"Thank you, Noella."
And began to explain.
"This bangle, just like our scarf, it was a gift from our mother. My siblings and I all have a matching one. They were enchanted, so then we can always find each other and never lose one another."
It was a sweet story of an explanation, but it brought sadness as it meant that his sister left it there. After a pause, Noella explains how she also has a matching bangle, and she holds up the gold hoop that she keeps in her hair. So they have that in common, except, unlike him wondering where his sister is, she already knows where the matching one is. Her voice gets quieter at that, and her gaze lowers. Noella was about to excuse herself again when Yasahiro spoke up and held out the small jade bangle.
"Take it."
Noella's eyes widen in shock at this. She asks him if he's sure. He just told her how much it means, and Yasahiro just shrugs.
"I don't have a use for it. You can use it to find me now, especially since I will be staying down here.
She was hesitant at first, but she accepted it, her heart beating a little faster at his offer. With these signs of their friendship not being destroyed, like she feared, she has the courage to do one last thing. She asks him if he has any money, which he raises an eyebrow, but says,
No?
So, she takes out some gold and slaps it into his hand, telling him to not sleep outside anymore, go get an in-room. He, of course, tries to deny her, but Noella refuses to let him, causing her to stupidly say, "Listen, if you take this, I'll go away. But if you don't accept it, well, then I guess you're just stuck with me for the whole day." Leaving Yasahiro to pause at his words and stare at her awkwardly, while Noella just internally screamed because she doesn't know why she said that. After a bit, Yasahiro just slowly nodded and took the money. And that was that. Noella then finally left, and Yasahiro just watched her, smiling and giving a chuckle with a shake of his head. She was a funny girl. A day passes, and Noella learns that her team has a new mission that will take them out of town. It sounds like they'll be away for a while, so Noella convinces the team to wait one more day before heading out. She decided that this would be the night she'd apologize to Yasahiro and make it up to him. They'd either go back to normal, or he'd be more annoyed with her, and she'd be able to run away for some days on this mission. So she buys some good liquor and heads out to the underground city district. Having fashioned the jade bangle into a necklace, she takes it out and uses it to help her find Yasahiro, following its glowing light like a compass. By the time she found him, she was happy to discover that he followed her instructions and got a room at an inn. She goes into the rough-looking inn and finds him talking with strangers. She interrupts and asks to spend some time with him for the night. Yasahiro is a little confused at why she's looking for him so soon after yesterday, but he accepts and ushers her to his room for privacy, ignoring the comments that the strangers basically catcall out to them. The room is small, only having a bed and a desk with a chair, but it's enough for the two of them as they sit down. Yasahiro is sitting on the bed while Noella takes the chair. Noella starts the conversation off very bluntly, addressing everything and apologizing to him. Luckily, they're able to easily work it out without a problem, by talking like adults, ending with Noella promising to help find his sister. From this talk, Noella ends up asking him to teach her his language, which is basically fantasy Japanese, but in their world, it is called Tetsu no Shimen. He's confused by this and isn't sure about it, but Noella insists until he agrees to teach her. He's a bit embarrassed by it, meanwhile Noella is just having fun poking at him being a teacher now. Yasahiro brushes it off and ends up back onto more serious matters. The mood sinks enough that Noella offers him a drink as she brings out multiple fucking liquor bottles from her bag. Yasahiro is surprised by this, but it gets a chuckle out of him, because of course Noella would be the only one to do something like this. And so they drink, and they get drunk, like usual. With her head on the table, Noella drunkenly offers for Yasahiro to get even with her for what she did. Yasahiro waves her off though and just mutters how he accepted her apology, so it's fine. But Noella had a hard time accepting that. He seemed so mad in the tunnels before. To which Yasahiro crosses his arms and quietly says,
Sure, I was upset, but what good does it do me to be mad? My whole life has been a sequence of me making the best decision I could at the time. I came here with a single goal, to protect my family. And now that goal is unattainable, so I'm lost. I had Mitsuki. She was someone to protect, someone to call family. But now she's gone. It's all my fault. I have no right to be mad. Being mad is what started all of this.
Something tugs at Noella's heart as she listens to him. So she stands up and wobbly makes her way to the bed, sitting next to him and taking his hands in hers. She tells him how Mitsuki isn't gone. He can still get her back. He can still have his family. He can still make this right. He just needs to keep trying. If he stops now, then this is all he will get. Yasahiro is resistant to listen at first, but he does relent as she continues to encourage him, muttering under his breath.
Right. Sorry, I'm not very fun drinking buddy now, am I?
Noella reassures him that he's fine. She's the one that brought all this up anyways, so it's her fault. She tries to make a bad joke to lighten the mood, and it works. They talk more and end up talking about their language lessons, and how technically she'd call him sensei and not teacher, and that she'd use his last name, Hanamura, and then he pauses before turning to her.
What is your last name, actually?
This is when Noella gets quiet, and admits to him that she doesn't have a last name. And technically, Noella isn't her name either. She then begins to tell him how she was originally called Palma by the pirates, meaning prize. Then she was given the name Noella by her best friend. Yasahiro places a hand over hers and tells her,
I like Noella. It's, nice.
She blushes a little bit and thanks him, awkwardly, clearing her throat before she changes topic to whatever comes to mind, which ends up being the jade bangle. She talks to him about it, and he ends up bringing out his own bangle, it being tied with a thick red cord. Both of their bangles glow and point at each other, illuminating their faces and the space around them. And they just stay there like that for a moment as Noella marvels at the beautiful light. If you think something romantic happens here, well, you're wrong! This is a slow burn! As instead, Yasahiro puts his bangle away and notes how it's late. She should probably get back to the tavern on the ground level district. Noella nods and is about to get up from the bed when she pauses, as she sees Yasahiro removes his gloves and she's able to see more of the scars that riddle his skin. She ends up stuck there, looking at them. Yasahiro notices and looks at his hands. He mutters,
Those guys down below, they were asking about how I got all of them. So, it's probably a good thing you showed up. Saved me from that mess.
Noella is understanding of this and doesn't ask about them. Instead, she just holds out her hand to him. Yasahiro is hesitant at first, but slowly he gives his hand, and as she looks at his scars and traces her fingers over them, lining the thin ones on his wrists and the large twisting scars up his arm, Yasahiro actually relaxes under her touch. He might have fallen asleep if he hadn't noticed the upset look that Noella got. Because Noella could tell. Noella could tell where he got these scars. He was a prisoner of war. He was tortured. He was tested and experimented on by physical and magical means. These scars of cuts, these scars of burns, these scars of skin twisted so far until the flesh tore. Up his arms and no doubt all over the rest of his body, if his scarred face and throat had anything to say about it. Noella was angry to see it, to know it happened to him. And then Yasahiro placed a hand over hers as she held his arm, quietly telling her,
They're only scars. They don't hurt anymore.
Noella then sucks in a breath and says, I know. I understand, but I just hate that it happened. Then, she removes her gloves and removes her boots, pulling up her pant leg to reveal her own scars to him. Her legs mangled with scars as she holds out her torn wrists towards him. I really understand, she repeats as she shows him. Something that she hasn't shown to anyone before. Yasahiro's eyes widen a bit, and he frowns as he had a feeling, but he didn't want it to be true. Quietly, he takes hold of her hand. He can tell the ones on her wrists are from struggling against bindings, and the ones on her legs are a mix of slashes and burns, all done precisely in a way that would leave a scar but not disable the movements of her legs, even though they were probably broken multiple times as well. Yasahiro sees the tattoo of the pirates on the back of her hand and clasps his other hand over it, covering it as he holds her hand in both of his.
I'm sorry.
Noella struggles to speak, her words and even her breath being caught in her throat. She could feel the corners of her eyes sting, but she sucks back the tears and forces herself to at least say, "Thank you." Then they stay there together for a long moment, just holding each other's hands until Yasahiro blinks and his senses come back to him. He takes his hands away and he tells her how he's honored that she trusted him with this, but he's kept her so late now, which Noella in turn ends up stumbling over her words as she tries to take the blame instead. She apologizes and offers for him to smack her on this mistake before she leaves, which Yasahiro looks horrified at and just places a hand gently on her head before telling her to never ask that of him again. That surprises Noella, and she tries to cover up her mistake, becoming a floundering mess and a tripping hazard. As she falls, Yasahiro catches her and tells her to wait here until she sobers up. Don't go back yet. So, she stays and sits at the table, but she never leaves that night. She ends up falling asleep in his room, and when she wakes up, Yasahiro is gone and a blanket is draped over her. With that, we'll end it there as we move on to the next arc, the Falling arc. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!